She heard a child screaming from under the ground. When Grace dug through the dirt with her bare hands and pulled that little boy out, gasping for air, she thought she'd saved his life. But then his father looked at her with pure rage and said 4 words that changed everything. "What have you done?" In the next 60 seconds, Grace went from hero to monster. The wealthy family she worked for turned against her. The police suspected her. And the real killer? She was standing right there, smiling. This is the true story of a housekeeper who everyone ignored, a woman in silk who everyone trusted, and 2 children who were running out of time. If you think you know how this story ends, trust me, you don't. Stay with me, because what happens next will break your heart, and then put it back together again. Now, let me take you back to the beginning. Welcome to Voice of Granny. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you're watching from. Let me tell you a story that will shake your soul. It's about a woman named Grace, a humble housekeeper who worked for one of the wealthiest families in Boston. Grace wasn't fancy. She didn't have much. But she had something more valuable than money. She had a heart that could hear what others chose to ignore. It was an ordinary Tuesday morning when Grace's life changed forever. The sun was just rising over the Patterson estate, casting golden light across the perfectly manicured lawns. Grace was watering the flowers in the garden, humming softly to herself, when she heard it. A cry, muffled, coming from beneath the ground. At first, she thought her mind was playing tricks. But then she heard it again, a child's voice, weak and desperate, calling from somewhere under the rose bushes. "Oh God, no," Grace whispered, dropping her watering can. It crashed against the stone path, but she didn't notice. Her hands were already digging into the soft earth, pulling away soil with frantic movements. Her fingers touched something cold, something small, a tiny hand. "Please, Lord, please," she sobbed, digging faster. When she saw the blue pajamas, her heart nearly stopped. It was little Tommy, the 6-year-old boy she'd been caring for. He was buried in the garden like a discarded toy. Grace hooked her arms under his small body and pulled with all her strength. Tommy's chest heaved as he gasped for air, coughing up dirt. His scream pierced the morning silence. "I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry," Grace cried, holding him close as he trembled in her arms. "You're safe now. You're safe." But then she heard footsteps. Heavy, running footsteps. Jonathan Patterson, the master of the house, came charging across the lawn. His face, usually so calm and controlled, was twisted with rage. Not relief. Not gratitude. Rage. "What have you done?" he roared. Grace looked up, confused. "Sir, I found him. He was buried." "You monster." Jonathan lunged forward and ripped Tommy from her arms. The boy cried out in pain. "Sir, please listen to me." His hand struck her face so hard she fell backward into the rose bushes. Thorns tore at her skin, her arms, her back. Blood dripped down her sleeve. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the horror of what was happening. "You tried to kill my son," Jonathan said, his voice shaking. "No," Grace whispered, struggling to stand. "No, I saved him. I heard him crying underground." "Liar," a woman's voice rang out. Veronica, Jonathan's elegant fiancée, appeared on the terrace. She wore a silk robe and perfect makeup, even this early in the morning. "How could you do this, Grace? He's just a child." The other servants gathered at the windows, whispering. Grace could see the judgment in their eyes. One by one, they turned against her. "I always knew something was wrong with her," the cook muttered. "She talks to herself," another added. Grace felt the world tilting beneath her feet. She was being framed. But by who? And why? Jonathan's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "If my son dies, your life won't be worth the dirt you dug." Grace wanted to scream the truth, but fear choked her words. She'd been working for this family for 3 years. She loved those children like they were her own. And now, in one terrible moment, everything she'd built was crumbling. Later that day, police officers questioned her on the cold marble steps. "Where were you before you found the boy?" "I was gardening. I heard him crying from underground," Grace repeated, her voice hollow. The detective didn't believe her. Inside the house, Veronica's sweet voice drifted through the hall. "Grace has always been unstable. She stares at the children's photos at night. I was afraid she might hurt someone." Grace washed the blood from her arms that evening, watching it swirl down the drain. Everything was falling apart. But deep in her heart, she knew one thing. Somebody had buried Tommy. Somebody wanted him dead. And that same somebody was working very hard to make sure Grace took the blame. As darkness fell over the Patterson estate, Grace made a decision. She wouldn't run. She wouldn't hide. She would find the truth, even if it destroyed her. Because sometimes, the only way to save the innocent is to face the guilty. And somewhere in that house, behind a door that was always locked, behind a smile that was too perfect, the guilty was watching. Waiting. Planning the next move. The game had only just begun. Let me tell you what happened next, because this is where the truth started showing its face. Slowly, like dawn breaking through darkness. Grace didn't sleep that night. How could she? Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Tommy's pale face covered in dirt, heard his weak cries for help. The image haunted her like a ghost that refused to leave. But Grace had learned something important in her 43 years of life. When people try to bury the truth, they always leave traces behind. And she was going to find every single one. The next morning, while everyone was at breakfast, Grace returned to the garden. The spot where Tommy had been buried was still disturbed, the earth darker and softer than the surrounding soil. She knelt down, ignoring the pain from her thorn-scratched arms, and carefully sifted through the dirt. That's when she found it. A silver hair clip, elegant and expensive, half buried near the roots of a rose bush. Grace turned it over in her hands. Engraved on the back were two initials, VM. Veronica Monroe. That was Veronica's maiden name, before she became Veronica Patterson to be. Grace's heart began to pound. Why would Veronica's hair clip be buried with Tommy? She slipped the clip into her apron pocket and stood up. As she did, she felt eyes on her. She turned slowly. There, in the second-floor window, stood Veronica, perfectly still, watching. When their eyes met, Veronica smiled, a cold, calculated smile that sent chills down Grace's spine. Grace knew then. She knew with absolute certainty. Veronica was involved. Maybe more than involved. Maybe responsible. But knowing and proving are two different things. Over the next few days, Grace watched and listened. She noticed things she'd missed before. How Veronica always appeared at just the right moment. How she spoke to the children with words that sounded loving but felt controlling. How little Emma, Tommy's 8-year-old sister, flinched whenever Veronica touched her hair. One evening, Grace was folding laundry when Emma crept into the room. The little girl's eyes were wide with fear. "Miss Grace," she whispered. "Yes, sweetheart? Veronica told me not to talk to you. She said, Mommy's ghost is angry because you bring bad luck." Grace's blood ran cold. "Honey, ghosts don't blame people. And I don't bring bad luck." Emma bit her lip. "I believe you. I know you saved Tommy. But I'm scared." Grace pulled the child close. "What are you scared of?" "That she'll hurt us too," Emma whispered. "Like she hurt the other girl." Grace pulled back, looking into Emma's eyes. "What other girl?" But before Emma could answer, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Emma's face went pale. She ran from the room, just as Veronica appeared in the doorway. "Grace," Veronica said sweetly. "I hope you weren't filling Emma's head with nonsense." "Just doing laundry, ma'am," Grace replied, keeping her voice steady. Veronica stepped closer. So close Grace could smell her expensive perfume. "You should leave this house, Grace. Before something worse happens. People who ask too many questions often find answers they can't survive." It was a threat, clear as day. But Grace didn't back down. "The truth has a way of coming out, ma'am. No matter how deep you try to bury it." For just a moment, Veronica's perfect mask slipped. Her eyes turned hard and cold. Then the smile returned. "We'll see about that." That night, Grace called her friend Detective Rodriguez from the local police department. They'd known each other for years. He was one of the few people she trusted completely. "I need your help," she said quietly. "I found something. A hair clip with initials. And there's more. I think this woman has done this before." Rodriguez was silent for a moment. "Grace, you need to be careful. These are powerful people." "I know. But those children need someone to protect them. If I don't do it, who will?" He sighed. "All right. Send me what you have. I'll start digging into this Veronica's background. But Grace, watch your back." As she hung up, Grace noticed something on her bed. An envelope. She hadn't put it there. With trembling hands, she opened it. Inside was a photograph. An old photograph of a young girl, maybe 5 years old, with dark hair and sad eyes. Standing behind her was a younger Veronica, smiling that same cold smile. Grace turned the photo over. Written on the back in faded ink were 3 words. She didn't survive. Grace's hands shook as she stared at the photograph. This wasn't just about Tommy. This was about a pattern. A history. Veronica had hurt children before. And unless Grace could prove it, she would hurt them again. Outside her window, thunder rumbled. A storm was coming. But Grace wasn't afraid of storms anymore. She'd already survived the worst one. The moment when everyone believed a lie instead of the truth. Now it was time to make them see what she'd seen all along. The monster wasn't the woman covered in dirt, desperately pulling a child from the earth. The monster was the woman in silk, smiling while children suffered. And monsters, Grace knew, only win when good people stay silent. She wasn't going to be silent anymore. Let me tell you about the moment when everything changed. When Grace stopped being the accused and started becoming the hunter. 3 days after finding the photograph, Grace did something that could have gotten her arrested. She waited until the house was quiet, until Jonathan was in his study and Veronica was on the phone in the sunroom. Then she slipped into Veronica's bedroom. Her heart hammered so loud she was sure someone would hear it. The room smelled like expensive perfume and lies. Everything was perfect, too perfect. The kind of perfect that hides rot underneath. Grace moved quickly, searching through drawers, checking behind picture frames, feeling under the mattress. Nothing. She was about to give up when she noticed something odd. The closet had a false panel in the back wall, barely visible unless you knew what to look for. With shaking hands, Grace pushed against it. The panel gave way. Behind it was a red folder. Inside that folder was proof. Terrible, undeniable proof. Passports with Veronica's face but different names. Veronica Monroe. Victoria Masters. Valentina Martinez. Each from a different country. Each with a different story. Marriage certificates. Name change documents. And then Grace's breath caught. A death certificate for a child. 5 years old. Drowned in a boating accident in Spain. Mother's name, Victoria Masters. Grace's hands trembled as she pulled out her phone and photographed every document. This woman had lived multiple lives. And in each life there were children. And some of those children hadn't survived. Find what you were looking for? Grace spun around. Veronica stood in the doorway, no longer smiling. Her face was cold, empty, like a mask had finally been removed. I know who you are, Grace whispered. Do you? Veronica stepped into the room, closing the door softly behind her. Do you really? Because I don't think you understand anything at all. You've done this before. You hurt children. You. I loved them. Veronica's voice cracked for the first time since Grace had met her. I loved every single one of them. But they always leave. They always die. They always disappoint. Grace backed toward the window. You buried Tommy alive. He wouldn't stop crying, Veronica said, her voice eerily calm now. He looked at me the same way she did. The same fear. The same judgment. I just wanted him to be quiet. I just wanted him to love me the way she should have. Who? Grace asked. Who are you talking about? Her name was Lily, Veronica whispered, and for a moment, Grace saw real pain in her eyes. My little sister. The only person who ever really loved me. Until she was taken away. Until they said I wasn't fit to care for her. Until she ran away and I never saw her again. Grace's heart ached despite everything. This woman was broken, shattered by loss and grief. But that didn't excuse what she'd done. Veronica, those children aren't Lily. You can't replace what you lost by destroying other lives. You think I don't know that? Veronica laughed bitterly. But every time I see them, I think maybe this time I can save one. Maybe this time I can prove I'm not the monster they said I was. Then let them go, Grace said gently. Let these children live their own lives. Get help. Please. For a moment, just one moment, something flickered in Veronica's eyes. Something human. Something reachable. Then it died. You should have left when I warned you, Veronica said coldly. She lunged forward, and Grace barely had time to dodge. They struggled, Grace trying to reach the door, Veronica blocking her path. In the chaos, the red folder fell, papers scattering across the floor like fallen leaves. Help! Grace screamed. Somebody help! The door burst open. Jonathan stood there, eyes wide with shock. Behind him, little Emma peeked around the doorframe. Daddy, I told you, Emma said quietly. I told you Veronica was hurting us. Everything stopped. Veronica froze. Grace stared at the child who'd finally found her voice. Jonathan's face went pale as he looked at the scattered documents, the passports, the death certificates, the evidence of a life built on lies. Who are you? He whispered. Veronica straightened her clothes, that perfect mask trying to slide back into place. But it was too late. Too much had been revealed. I'm someone who loved your children, she said softly. More than you know. You buried my son alive, Jonathan said, his voice breaking. Sirens wailed in the distance. Detective Rodriguez had been listening to everything through the phone in Grace's pocket. She'd called him before entering the room. As police officers filled the house, Veronica was led away in handcuffs. She didn't fight. She didn't scream. She just looked back at Grace one last time. "You think you saved them," Veronica said. "But now they'll always know what monsters look like." "That's not saving. That's just a different kind of wound." Grace watched her go, heart heavy. Because in a terrible way, Veronica was right. The children would carry this forever. But they would carry it alive. They would carry it as survivors, not victims. And sometimes that's the only victory we get. Let me tell you about the aftermath, because healing is never as simple as we want it to be. 3 weeks after Veronica's arrest, Grace sat in a coffee shop across from Detective Rodriguez. He slid a thick folder across the table. "You were right," he said quietly. "She's connected to at least 4 missing children cases across 3 countries. All of them had one thing in common. They were placed temporarily with a woman using variations of her name." Grace opened the folder, her hands trembling. Inside were photographs of children. Beautiful children with bright eyes that would never grow old. "Did any of them survive?" she asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. "We don't know," Rodriguez admitted. "Some of the cases were closed, ruled as accidents or runaways. But now we're reopening everything. And Grace," he hesitated, "Veronica wants to talk to you." Grace's coffee cup stopped halfway to her lips. "What?" "She won't speak to anyone else. Says you're the only one who understood her. The FBI thinks she might reveal where some of these children are. If any are still alive." Grace set her cup down carefully. "She's playing games. Maybe. But what if she's not? What if there's even a chance one of those kids is still out there?" Grace closed her eyes. She was so tired. Tired of fighting, tired of digging up pain. She just wanted to care for Tommy and Emma, help them heal, and forget this nightmare ever happened. But then she thought about those faces in the photographs. Those children who never got a chance to grow up, to laugh again, to feel safe. "All right," she said finally. "I'll talk to her." The prison was cold and gray, exactly what you'd expect. Grace sat in a small room with bulletproof glass between her and the woman who'd tried to destroy her life. Veronica looked different. Her perfect hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. No makeup. No silk. Just a worn orange jumpsuit and eyes that held something Grace hadn't seen before. Something like honesty. They both picked up the phones. "You came," Veronica said softly. "I came for them," Grace replied. "The children. The ones from your past. Do you know where they are?" Veronica stared at her for a long moment. "There's a storage locker in Austin, Texas. Unit 247. The key is in a safe deposit box at First National Bank under the name Victoria Masters." "What's in the locker?" "Everything," Veronica whispered. "Journals. Letters. Photos. Everything about Lily and what happened after she left." Grace leaned forward. "Is Lily alive?" Veronica's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know. She ran away when she was 11. I searched for years, but it was like she vanished into thin air. Every child I tried to help after that, I was looking for her in their faces, trying to save her over and over again." "That's not love," Grace said gently. "That's obsession." "I know," Veronica said, tears streaming down her face. "I know that now. But knowing doesn't fix what I broke, does it?" Grace sat back, looking at this broken woman who'd caused so much pain. Part of her wanted to hate Veronica. Part of her wanted to walk away and never look back. But another part, the part that understood how trauma can twist us into shapes we don't recognize, that part felt something close to pity. "The children you hurt," Grace said quietly. "Tommy and Emma. They're healing. They're laughing again. They're going to be okay." Veronica's face crumpled. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for being what I couldn't be." Grace left the prison with a heavy heart. That evening, she traveled to Austin and opened the storage locker. Inside was exactly what Veronica had promised. Journals filled with desperate handwriting, photographs of a little girl with sad eyes, and letters addressed to Lily that were never sent. Grace read one of the letters. "Dear Lily, I'm sorry I wasn't the sister you needed. I'm sorry my love felt like a cage instead of wings. Wherever you are, I hope you found someone who let you breathe. Veronica." Grace folded the letter carefully and added it to the evidence file. Then she made a call to a national missing persons database and submitted Lily's information with a note. "If you're out there, if you survived, know that someone is looking for you. Not to hurt you, just to know you made it." 2 months later, Grace stood in the Patterson house garden. She'd planted new flowers where Tommy had been buried, bright yellow sunflowers that turned their faces toward the light. A small stone plaque sat among the flowers. It read, "For those who were lost, may they find peace. May we remember." Tommy and Emma helped her water the garden every morning now. Tommy still had nightmares sometimes, but they were getting less frequent. Emma was seeing a therapist and learning that it's okay to speak up when something feels wrong. And Grace? Grace had finally been given official custody as the children's legal guardian after Jonathan realized who had truly protected his family. One afternoon, as Grace watched the children play, her phone rang. It was Rodriguez. "Grace," he said, excitement in his voice. "We found her. We found Lily." Grace's heart stopped. "Is she alive?" "She's alive. She's been living under a different name in Oregon. Married. Has kids of her own. She's been hiding all these years because she was afraid Veronica would find her." Grace closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. "Thank God. Thank God." "There's more," Rodriguez continued. "Lily wants to talk to you. She said anyone brave enough to stop her sister deserves to hear her story." And that's how, 1 month later, Grace found herself sitting across from a woman in her 30s with kind eyes and a gentle smile. A woman who'd survived her own nightmare and built a beautiful life from the ashes. "Thank you," Lily said simply, "for protecting those children the way no one protected me." "I'm just glad you made it," Grace replied. Lily looked out the window at the Oregon rain. "You know what the hardest part was? Learning that my sister's love was real, but her methods were poison. She did love me, but she loved me like I was a doll to fix her broken heart, not a person with my own needs." Grace nodded, understanding completely. "But I survived," Lily continued, turning back with a smile. "And because of you, Tommy and Emma will survive too. That's all we can do, isn't it? Survive and help others do the same." "Yes," Grace said softly. "That's all we can do. Let me tell you how this story ends, because endings are just as important as beginnings." It's been a year since Grace pulled Tommy from the garden. A year since the truth came crashing down like thunder on the Patterson estate. A year since everything changed. The autumn leaves are falling again in Boston, painting the world in shades of gold and amber. Grace stands on the porch of the Patterson home, though honestly, it feels more like her home now, watching Tommy and Emma play in the yard. Tommy is 7 now. He's chasing butterflies with a net, laughing when they escape. The dirt doesn't scare him anymore. He's learned that Earth can be a place where things grow, not just where things get buried. Emma is 9. She's reading a book under the oak tree, her voice carrying on the breeze as she reads aloud to her stuffed animals. She found her voice again, and now she uses it freely, beautifully. Jonathan sits beside Grace, a cup of coffee in his hands. He's different too. Quieter. More present. Less concerned with business deals, and more focused on being the father his children needed him to be all along. "I never thanked you properly," he says quietly. Grace shakes her head. "You don't need to." "Yes, I do." He turns to face her. "I hit you. I accused you. I believed a monster over the woman who loved my children. I'll carry that shame for the rest of my life. We all believed what we wanted to see," Grace says gently. "Veronica was good at making people see what she wanted them to see. But you saw through it." "Only because I was looking," Grace replies. "Only because I knew what it felt like to be invisible, to be dismissed. Sometimes the people society ignores are the ones who see the truth most clearly." They sit in comfortable silence for a while, watching the children play. "Did you hear?" Jonathan asks. "Veronica's case is wrapping up. She pled guilty to all charges. She'll spend the rest of her life in prison." Grace nods. She'd heard. Part of her feels relief. Part of her feels sadness for the broken woman who let her pain turn her into something terrible. "I wrote her a letter," Grace admits. "I don't know if I'll send it, but I wrote it anyway." "What did you say?" Grace pulls the folded letter from her pocket. She's been carrying it for weeks, unable to decide what to do with it. She reads aloud. "Dear Veronica, I forgive you. Not because what you did was okay. It wasn't. You hurt innocent children, and that's unforgivable in many ways. But I forgive you because carrying hate is too heavy, and I've got better things to carry now. Like Tommy's backpack when he's tired and Emma's drawings, and the weight of being the person these kids depend on. I know you were hurting. I know you lost someone and never recovered. But pain doesn't give us permission to cause more pain. It just doesn't. I hope you find peace somehow. I hope you spend your time helping instead of hurting, even from behind bars. But mostly, I hope you finally understand what love really is. It's letting people be who they are, not who you need them to be. Grace. Jonathan wipes his eyes. Will you send it? Maybe, Grace says. Or maybe I'll just burn it and let the smoke carry the words away. Either way, I've said what needed saying. The children run up to the porch, breathless and happy. Miss Grace. Tommy shouts. Look what I caught. He holds up a jar with a butterfly inside, its wings gently beating against the glass. Grace kneels down. He's beautiful, isn't he? Tommy nods enthusiastically. What do you think we should do with him? Grace asks. Tommy looks at the butterfly, then at Grace, then back at the butterfly. His little face grows serious. Let him go, because being trapped is scary. Grace's heart swells with pride. That's exactly right, sweetheart. Tommy unscrews the lid, and the butterfly takes flight, dancing up into the golden afternoon sun. Emma joins them, handing Grace a drawing she just finished. It shows 3 people, Grace and the 2 children, standing in a garden full of sunflowers. Above them, the words, Our family. It's perfect, Grace whispers, pulling both children close. That evening, after the children are in bed, Grace walks through the garden one last time. The sunflowers are starting to droop, their season ending. But their seeds will fall and new flowers will grow in the spring. That's how healing works, she thinks. One season ends, another begins. The pain doesn't disappear completely, but it transforms into something else, into wisdom, into strength, into the determination to do better. She touches the small memorial plaque among the flowers. For those who were lost, she reads aloud. May they find peace. May we remember. She thinks of Lily, safe in Oregon with her own family. She thinks of the other children whose cases are being investigated now, whose stories are finally being told. She thinks of Tommy and Emma upstairs, sleeping peacefully in beds that are finally safe. And she thinks of herself, a simple housekeeper who refused to let injustice win, who dug for truth when everyone else wanted to bury it, who stood up when standing was the hardest thing in the world. Thank you, she whispers to the stars above. Thank you for giving me the strength to hear that cry from beneath the earth. Thank you for making me the kind of person who digs toward life instead of away from it. The wind rustles through the garden, carrying the scent of earth and flowers and possibility. Tomorrow, Grace will wake up and make breakfast. She'll help with homework and kiss scraped knees and read bedtime stories. She'll live the beautifully ordinary life of someone who loves and is loved in return. But tonight, in this quiet moment, she allows herself to feel the weight of what she's been through and the triumph of what she survived. She saved 2 children from a woman whose love had turned poisonous. She uncovered a truth that powerful people wanted buried. She proved that sometimes the most invisible people are the ones with the clearest vision. And she taught 2 precious children the most important lesson of all, that they are worthy of protection, worthy of truth, and worthy of a love that doesn't hurt. As Grace walks back toward the house, she sees the lights glowing warm in the windows. Inside, there is laughter and safety and tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. The garden no longer holds secrets. The children no longer hold fear. And Grace no longer holds doubt about her purpose in this world. She is exactly where she's meant to be, doing exactly what she was meant to do. Protecting the innocent, speaking for the silenced, and proving that truth, no matter how deeply buried, will always find its way back to the light. This is how the story ends. Not with revenge or bitterness, but with healing and hope and the quiet strength of a woman who refused to look away. And that, dear friends, is the most powerful ending of all. The end.